If you've been scrolling lately, you've probably seen the headlines about a Qatar-gifted Boeing 747 being modified for presidential use. Hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars in security upgrades. The full replacement program for America's next presidential jets has climbed into the multi-billion-dollar range, while even the temporary bridge aircraft requires major security work. And one obvious question, why does the US government need to spend that much money on a plane? From the outside, it's easy to picture the wrong answer. Nicer seats, bigger screens, polished interiors, maybe a cabin that looks like a billionaire's private jet. But the real story is hidden in the upgrades most people will never see. That is where a presidential aircraft stops being just another 747 and starts becoming something no commercial airline could ever own. So let's peel back the reality behind that price tag and see why no civilian airline would ever operate anything quite like the fully equipped Air Force One. And the best place to start is the detail that feels the most backward. Because when people hear more than $5 billion, they expect the most futuristic aircraft in the sky. Instead, some of the most important systems may look surprisingly old school. Small correction before we go further. Air Force One is technically a call sign, not a single aircraft. But when most people say it, they're usually picturing the fully equipped VC-25A presidential jets, and that's the kind of aircraft this video is really about. If you ever got to step inside the cockpit or certain command areas of a presidential aircraft, the first surprise might be what you don't see. You might expect giant touchscreens, smooth glass panels, bright OLED displays, the kind of sleek digital setup you see in a Tesla, a new business jet, or a luxury airline commercial. Instead, some systems may feel much more old school. The controls look physical, the switches look heavy, the screens look rugged, almost stubborn, like they were built to survive a bad day instead of impressing a camera. And yes, that can feel strange when we're talking about one of the most expensive aircraft operations on Earth. But there's a reason engineers don't chase the newest looking interface just because it looks cool on camera. Modern electronics are amazing on a normal day. Fast, light, incredibly powerful. Newer commercial aircraft rely heavily on digital systems because those systems help pilots process information quickly, reduce weight, and make the whole aircraft more efficient. However, a presidential aircraft has to be ready for more than normal conditions. Military engineers also have to think about threats most travelers never consider, including an electromagnetic pulse or EMP. In simple terms, it's a sudden burst of electromagnetic energy that can damage sensitive electronics in extreme situations. And the more delicate the circuit, the less forgiving it can be. Some older style systems can be shielded, hardened, and trusted in ways fragile digital interfaces can't. So the old school look is not the point. Reliability is. And once you realize the plane is built to survive the kind of day nobody wants to imagine, the next question gets darker. What happens if the threat is not electronic but physical? Now picture the scenario this aircraft is actually built for. A sudden attack aimed at the president. If you're thinking like a normal airline passenger, your first instinct is probably get underground, find a bunker, hide somewhere solid. On Air Force One, the safer move may be the one that feels backwards. Launch, climb, and stay out of reach. The aircraft itself is basically treated like military hardware. Publicly available details don't spell out every layer of protection, and that's the point. A presidential aircraft doesn't come with a public defense manual. Public reporting has described missile defense capabilities and other countermeasures, though the exact systems are not something the government lays out in detail. But protection only matters if the aircraft can keep moving. And this is where Air Force One breaks one of the basic rules of flying. Eventually, every plane has to land, except this one was designed to delay that moment. Which brings us to the fuel question. If this plane has to avoid danger and remain airborne, how long can it actually keep flying? Air Force One can refuel in midair from military tanker aircraft. In theory, that lets it remain airborne for an extremely long time without landing. In practice, the limits are engine oil, crew endurance, medical and food supplies, and how long the aircraft can safely operate before maintenance becomes necessary. A normal airplane has to land when it runs low on fuel. Air Force One doesn't face that same limit. The crew can avoid unsafe airports, wait for conditions on the ground to change, and keep the president moving while security teams decide the safest next step. And when a plane this large needs to get away fast, staying airborne is only part of the story. It also has to move fast. On a normal commercial flight, your Boeing or Airbus usually cruises around 30,000 to 35,000 feet at roughly 500 to 600 miles per hour. Airlines choose that range for a simple reason: fuel efficiency. Flying faster burns more fuel, drives up operating costs, and usually doesn't save enough time to justify the expense on regular passenger routes. Air Force One operates under a different priority. The VC-25A can climb to 45,100 feet and reach Mach 0.92, about 630 miles per hour. For an aircraft based on a Boeing 747, that's extremely fast. At that altitude, the air is thinner. The aircraft can fly above much of the bad weather and stay away from crowded commercial traffic patterns. In an emergency, that speed matters. The clearest example people often mention is September 11th. While the situation on the ground was still chaotic, Air Force One had to move under extreme security pressure. Fighter jets were brought in to escort the aircraft and keep the president protected in the air. Mark Tillman, the pilot of Air Force One that day, later recalled that the plane was moving so fast the F-16 escorts had trouble staying with it without burning fuel too quickly. Reportedly, they asked him to slow down. That one detail tells you plenty. Air Force One may look like a massive passenger jet, but its speed and altitude help it do one thing very quickly: get out of the danger zone. In that moment, speed buys time, and time gives the security team more options. But speed only solves the first problem. Once the president is safe in the air, the next problem is even bigger. Can the country still be run from there? By then, the plane may barely be leveled off, and the president may already need intelligence updates, military options, and a secure line to commanders. At that point, this aircraft becomes something far more serious than transportation. People often call Air Force One a flying office. Well, that undersells it. A better description is a command center in the sky. At 40,000 feet, the president still needs to receive classified briefings, speak with military leaders, and make urgent national security decisions in real time. If Washington goes dark, the president still needs a way to govern. To make that work, the aircraft carries one of the most secure communication systems ever installed on a plane. Inside, the plane carries secure phones, military radio systems, and encrypted satellite links that allow the president to connect with the White House, the Pentagon, intelligence officials, and commanders around the world. Some reports describe around 85 onboard telephones. The aircraft is also reported to contain roughly 238 miles of wiring, about twice as much as a standard Boeing 747. All that wiring forms the hidden backbone for secure calls, encrypted signals, backup channels, and protected systems throughout the plane. From his seat in the air, the president can address the nation, receive military updates, coordinate with national security teams, or issue strategic orders. At that point, the plane is carrying more than the president. It's carrying the decision-making power of the US government. Here's where the story shifts inside the cabin. The interior is practical, but not in the way most people imagine. Say presidential plane, and people picture gold fixtures, marble showers, leather lounges, and a cabin built for luxury. But the interior isn't designed to impress guests. It's designed so a government can keep moving inside a metal tube at 40,000 feet. Air Force One has about 4,000 square feet of usable floor space across 3 levels. But the space works more like a tiny government operation than a private jet showroom. One area gives the president room to work and rest. Nearby spaces keep senior advisors closed for meetings in the air. The press section keeps the public-facing side of the trip moving. The 2 kitchens can prepare around 100 meals, which matters when a full traveling team may be airborne for hours. Then there's the medical suite. It carries emergency equipment, medication, and a military doctor who travels with the president. Reports have also described blood supplies matched to the president's blood type, ready for a serious medical emergency. The point isn't comfort for comfort's sake, it's continuity. Every room helps the traveling government stay organized, functional, medically supported, and ready to move the moment the wheels touch the runway. And then comes the most dangerous part of any flight. Not the cruise, not the altitude, but the moment the aircraft touches someone else's airport. On a regular commercial flight, the process is familiar. The jet bridge connects, airport stairs roll up, baggage crews move in, ground vehicles surround the plane. Within minutes, dozens of people and machines are working around the aircraft. Air Force One cuts down that exposure as much as possible. For the traditional VC-25A aircraft, that includes features like built-in air stairs and self-contained baggage handling, so the president doesn't have to depend on whatever equipment happens to be waiting at the airport. The Qatar-gifted 747 bridge aircraft may not include every feature of the traditional VC-25A or the future VC-25B. But the security logic is the same. Reduce exposure, limit outside access, and keep as much of the environment around the president under American control as possible. The same idea applies to luggage and sensitive gear. Sensitive equipment isn't treated like regular baggage. It moves through secured handling managed by trusted personnel. One unfamiliar worker standing too close to the aircraft creates a risk. A device could be planted, a sensitive area could be photographed, a small mistake on the ramp could become a serious security problem. So, Air Force One brings its own system with it. The stairs, the cargo handling, the access points, the vehicles, and the people near the aircraft are all tightly controlled. Airport traffic also bends around it. When Air Force One takes off or lands, other aircraft can be held back, ground movement can pause, and the presidential aircraft gets priority. Even the crew isn't airline staff. They're U.S. Air Force personnel, selected and screened for one of the most sensitive aviation jobs in the world. And Air Force One almost never travels alone. Before the president arrives, military transport aircraft, such as the C-17 Globemaster III, can move the support operation ahead of time. That includes armored vehicles, security equipment, and sometimes the famous presidential limousine known as the Beast. Helicopters such as Marine One may also be positioned for the next stage of the trip. When Air Force One lands, the plane is only the visible part. The real operation is everything moving around it. Now we've gone through the reality behind a presidential aircraft program that has climbed to more than $5 billion. In the end, that price tag is not buying a fancier airplane. It is buying time, the one thing a president may need most when the ground stops being safe. And in a world obsessed with the newest screens and the sleekest technology, Air Force One makes an older lesson feel surprisingly current. Reliability can matter more than looking modern. So where do you land on this? Necessary national security or taxpayer overkill? Drop your take in the comments. And if this video helped you see Air Force One differently, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still thinks it's just a fancy 747.